my fellow Americans? Are we reaping our harvest of greed? Have we built our house on sinking sand? Why are we being ugly Americans?
Good morning, this is CJ Holmes, founder of Homeowners for Justice and your producer and host for Weekdays Live. Once again today on Thursday with some breaking banking news, of course, and some ideas on how we can get our economic power back and reinvent our currency. Because as we all know, we're facing a crisis, but we're not there yet, and we can implement some solutions. So I want to emphasize again, there isn't any meaningful bank reform yet. They talk about it, they've passed laws, they haven't come into effect, and we can help push some of these reforms along. Also, I'm going to expose the FHFA again and more on other indictments and how we can report fraud and some of the weaknesses that I've discovered when I go to that government website. And as we push, as the people push back, the people will get resolutions. And then we're going to welcome Philip Beard today as he's talking about ways that we can get our economic power back, get an honest currency. He'll expose us to what others are doing and thinking about this. So we're really, really excited about that. But before we do that, I'm smiling and laughing because I swear, this writer, and I've already asked him to come on the show. This is a writer, Holden Lewis. He writes for Bankrate.com. And I will be saying this over and over, screwing up for fun and profit. It's his words, and this, you've just got to see this article. That's why I'm starting with this. Of course, we already talked yesterday how some of these foreclosure checks bounced. So he's written this so well. I just want to read some of this. A bunch of the big banks agreed to $3.6 billion legal settlement a few months ago to halt the review of improper foreclosures. And under that settlement, checks are going to be sent out. Now listen to how many they're sending out. 4 million. So if you got a check, remember we talked yesterday, demand that the OCC, the CFPB, they tell you what laws were violated against you so that you can sue the banks and either get a huge settlement or your house back. Because these are for people that were either lost their homes or were in the foreclosure process in 2009 and 10. And of course, like I keep saying, what about 2008 and 2011 and 2012 and 2013? Let's look at those 4 years too. So of course they sent the first wave of checks on Friday and some of them bounced. The Fed phrased it this way. Some early recipients of checks informed the Federal Reserve's Consumer Helpline on Tuesday that they were told their checks couldn't be cashed. The Fed says the problem has been solved. And here you go, the classic line, screwing up for fun and profit. This is the latest episode in a long, tragic comedy in which banks, regulators, and consultants rival the Keystone Cops in ineptitude. And I'm telling you, this is intentional. It is not ineptitude. This is intentional fraud and deceit. These banks, regulators, and consultants have excelled at only one thing. This is true. Protecting each other. Oh, two things. Making a killing while they're doing it. They've made tremendous profits. But I like this writer's opinion. The biggest abuse came in the form of improper foreclosures in which banks' law firms fabricated and robo-signed documents. And then the regulators got tough. If by got tough you mean let the banks choose the consultants who would review the paperwork and identify the abuses, and then let the consultants dawdle and delay and get away with covering it up. This is what happens when regulators to protect consumers are considered a nuisance or an inconvenience to banks. And that's the political culture we inhabit, and this is what we get. And I would have to argue that the biggest abuse was the toxic loans, the fraudulent inducement to get every one of us suckered into this scheme. securitize our signatures on the loan app, the denied loan applications, the loans, and sell them 19 times to different mortgage-backed securities, cheat all the government for all the insurance payouts. Oh, and then improperly foreclose so they get free houses while they push the people under the bridge. And of course, what he says, sorry, this is what they say. Sorry about losing your house. Sorry we illegally took the house. Here's a small check. After lying in the pockets of the independent consultants with $2 billion for not doing much. Yeah, we're talking $250 an hour for those people to review your theft, the theft of your home. They get $2 billion. The homeowners get nothing. So regulators and banks cooked up the foreclosure settlement. It's another cooked up scheme in which former owners are paid $300. I've already told you yesterday, I've got people that got $300. Somebody wrote to me they got $600. Somebody got $2,000. Somebody got $6,000. They all lost their homes. And this is illegally. And every last one of them should have the right to get treble damages because the loss of their home was based on fraud. And so would you expect the checks to be sent by the banks or the government agency? But they said it was Rust Consulting Inc. So I'm positive some people hearing me right now have already started Googling, and they're going to be researching who owns this corporation. I swear it's a wholly owned subsidiary of one of the banksters. But nevertheless, if you get a letter from Rust Consulting, don't throw it away. He wants you to white out your address and send him a copy of it. According to the Fed, the bouncing checks show Rust Consulting as the paying agent, drawn on an account at the Huntington National Bank. After borrowers called the Fed's complaint line Tuesday, they did say Rust subsequently corrected the problems, like they put the money in the account that they had already been given. So it makes you wonder, are they floating the money that they were given to make the payments and hoping that they could float it longer because they can make gain on the float? Just a thought I had. And so anyway, of course, you can call them at 888-952-9105. So I recommend that everybody call them and ask them. Let's swamp them with a bunch of calls demanding, where is your check? Yes, and this writer did check to make sure that the Fed didn't give out the wrong number. Oh my goodness, this is the culture we're in. We must change this. So he has a request for people who've received checks from Rust Consulting. Please take a picture of the envelope, cover up the address, your address, and send him a picture of the envelope. He wants to post a picture so folks will know what to watch out for. And here is his email address, hlewis@bankrate.com. Now, I have already emailed him this morning when I saw this. I emailed him and asked him to be on the live stream show. So please email him. Ask him to be on the show. Let's get this guy with us. Let's get him on the show. Let's start leveraging these people that are obviously writing on behalf of the people, on us. We need a voice. Let's snag every voice we can possibly get. Thanks, guys. Like I said, it takes all of us to work this together. We have to build a machine that's going to get this news out and get solutions for the people. Okay, I've said repeatedly, if you want honest news, it's very difficult to go to our mainstream media. Here's BBC. Here's some honest news for you.
It was the centerpiece of President Barack Obama's first term. But 3 years since the so-called Dodd-Frank became law, no meaningful financial regulations have been implemented.
Americans are still suffering the effects of the financial crisis. People in this country are frustrated. Banks have never really been held accountable for their failings. And today, the same question still remains. Are U.S. banks too big to fail?
Weighing into the debate, the head of the International Monetary Fund.
The priority must be to continue to clean up the banking system by recapitalizing it, restructuring it, or where necessary, sizing it down by shutting down some banks.
Smaller banks is the outcome some U.S. lawmakers are hoping for by crafting a bill that forces financial institutions to hold more capital. It's an idea that's gaining support from both sides and a normally very divided Congress. Although bankers are dismissive, there's a suggestion it would actually be in their best interest to be broken up.
The idea would be that if you sort of separated out all the parts of J.P. Morgan Chase & Co., they would be worth more added up together than in fact they are as an integrated unit. Now, the banks themselves clearly disagree with this. They maintain that there is a great advantage from both scale and also from sort of the overall breadth that they have, which allows for diversification.
But some argue being too big isn't the problem. It's being too secretive. The 5 largest banks have trillions of dollars in trading and derivatives that are not on their balance sheets.
The issue is one of transparency and the fact that these organizations are opaque and not revealing essentially this gigantic gambling casino in which they are currently engaged.
Engaging in risky, complex trades cost J.P. Morgan over $6 billion back in May. Confounding critics, America's largest bank survived the London whale debacle largely unscathed, suggesting its sheer size allowed it to weather that storm. Samir Hussain, BBC News, New York.
Did you hear that? Did you hear what I heard? 2 things. These derivatives are off balance sheet. And IMF wants to recapitalize the banks. And remember, we learned just a couple of days ago where they're going to recapitalize. They're going to recapitalize out of your deposits. Now, it's not just ours, your deposits and my deposits in the banks. It's our government's deposits. So think about where your city has its cash. Does your city, does your county have its cash reserves and monies, checking accounts, savings accounts in a mega bank? Is it in Wells Fargo? Is it in B of A? They will confiscate those accounts too. Let's use our heads on this, and let's really think about what we're hearing. This is why I wanted to play this little episode, because the fact is, I don't think I've heard before that the derivatives and all of these risky trades were actually off balance sheet on the books. Now, maybe I've just not been hearing right, but I heard it this time. We've heard it this time. We're talking about it. So this is really why it is absolutely critical that every entity possible, every one that we know, and every city and county start getting their monies out of these banks. This is a real urgent push to get them into the public bank system, into public banking, into places where they can't be absconded with, confiscated. Just a thought. Okay. Freddie Mac, FHFA, ain't it great? So here we've got a watchdog stating that the servicers are what a shock, failing to promptly resolve serious consumer complaints that could involve fraud or possible improper foreclosures. We see this everywhere. I'm getting so sick of it, and I want a solution because, of course, and I've highlighted this, more than 34,000 escalated cases which could involve servicing fraud or regulatory violations were filed by homeowners with Freddie Mac and its 8 largest mortgage servicers during a 14-month period between October 11 and November 2012. But Freddie and the regulator have not resolved many of these cases. Although the FHFA guidelines require services to report these cases and resolve them in 30 days, more than 20% were not taken care of in that time. Freddie Mac's oversight of servicer compliance has been inadequate. Gee, what a shock. And FHFA oversees Freddie Mac. And so I wanted to point out down here which servicers have been non-compliant. Gee, what a shock. Bank of America, City Mortgage, Provident, and Wells Fargo. They didn't comply. The servicers did not report any escalated cases to Freddie Mac, despite handling more than 20,000 such cases. And of course, when the Inspector General, called them and said, "Hey, when you're going to start following the law?" They said, "Oh, I guess we'll start reporting to Freddie Mac." Data on all of Freddie Mac's servicers revealed that about 98% never reported any escalated cases as of December 2012. And many of these servicers manage for Fannie Mae. So here you go. It's who's responsible and who's going to hold their feet to the fire. And the answer is nobody. The people. This is, and of course now, they've been told to do this. Are they doing it? Well, you and I, if we had to lay odds, we'd gamble that they're not. Interestingly enough, and I wanted to show you this, of course, because this is the statement from Edward DeMarco, acting director of the FHFA, and this was just done in April 18, 2013, and it's right before the Senate Banking Committee, Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs, and it's an update on the oversight of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and federal home loan banks. And so, of course, I've just highlighted here on page 3. The second phase of the conservatorships has focused on foreclosure prevention efforts, which have been critical for helping homeowners in distress and essential to meeting the conservatorship mandate to preserve and conserve the enterprise's assets. And nearly 2.7 million foreclosure prevention actions evidence the success of that effort to date. I skimmed this. I couldn't see any reference to this other article which said, "Hey, gee, you're not escalating these complaints." Of course, you guys can research it. The fact is, like I've said over and over, who needs to research more fraud? We just know it's all fraudulent. Everybody's cheating. Everybody's getting away with it. Everyone's buying off the regulators. The regulators are in bed with the companies that they regulate. What are we going to do about it? And then just a couple of other quick articles. These will be linked in the comment sections after the show. Wells Fargo, now this is a plus for the people. They're still subject to False Claims Act suit despite prior settlement. Now the good part is Wells Fargo was trying to convince the judge that because they did the settlement, that's a $25 billion settlement with the states and the attorney generals, that they shouldn't be held liable. This suit needs to just disappear because we already settled. And this judge is saying, no. That's something else. You settled over there, but now this is accusing you, the government is accusing you of defrauding the Federal Housing Administration, FHA, over the past 10 years, decade, by underwriting loans backed by FHA that did not qualify for the program. You cheated, is the government. Now, that's the good part. They're holding Wells Fargo feet to the fire. The bad part is it's on behalf of the government. It's not for the people. They're not saying, and this is the unfortunate part, they're accusing them of all of these loans that defrauded the FHA. Well, what do you think they did to the borrowers? They've defrauded the people, but this is not for the people. And that's the humongous disconnect. We need to completely start talking about discussions and ideas for how we finance homes. If homes are really, border on the rights of the people deserve a home, then we need to emphasize how they can afford that. That is not going to just throw them out on the street at the behest of some investor. It's complicated, but I don't believe it's impossible to solve that. And then, there are people, here's a former manager at Credit Suisse indicted for helping to hide massive losses, and these are losses in the mortgage-backed securities. And this is just a manager at Credit Suisse Group, a banker, that, they hid all the losses. All the loans started going south. They were supposed to be marking to market each one of these loans as they declined in value. And they were supposed to be telling people, their investors and others, what the actual value of these securities were. And then they just cheated and didn't do it. And so, yes, they're now that manager is being indicted. Talks about the pricing of the mortgage-backed securities, the bond repricing scheme. And this just brings to mind again in my thinking that whose signatures, whose loans were securitized in this massive scheme and cover-up. It was yours and mine. We're the ones that really have gotten ruined by this. But it looks as if we don't have much recourse. I wanted to point out down here at the very bottom of the article, that's why I've scrolled down. Over the past 3 fiscal years, the Justice Department, this is the United States, the Justice Department has filed nearly 10,000 financial fraud cases against nearly 15,000 defendants, including more than 2,900 mortgage fraud defendants. And then it says for more information on this task force, go to stopfraud.gov. So we're going to go to stopfraud.gov. Let's see who they have been filing these claims against. So here we go. Here's how to report fraud. There's a home page, and then I went to report fraud. So I want to report, and here, well, bankruptcy fraud, computer-based fraud, cybercrime, elder fraud, health information privacy violations, housing discrimination, identity theft, commodities investment and securities fraud, mail fraud, mass marketing, telemarketing, Medicare, mortgage fraud or loan scams, Recovery Act, rescue fraud, residential mortgage-backed securities fraud, retirement plan abuse, Social Security number misuse, student loan, tax fraud, and unfair competition. Let's take a look at this. And so we can actually go to the FBI and the Housing and Urban Development Office, prevent loan scams, the FTC, Recovery Act fraud. So why don't we start filing our fraud cases, you notice there was no foreclosure fraud. Nothing to say, hey, you got fraudulent recorded documents used for your foreclosure? Call this number. Let's start demanding that they do. See, it's all about the investors, the securities, the people that are saying I can get you a loan modification. They take money up front and cheat you, but nothing about for the people. So let's demand from the stopfraud.gov. Let's find out. Please help me. Help me find out from this entity how we can file our fraudulent documents, a complaint on our fraud, to stop these foreclosure mills. I already did the 18 fraudulent sets of foreclosures. Every foreclosure I looked at for Recon Trust in the state of California, there were so many fake documents, forged documents, false notarizations across the board that every one of these foreclosures is fraudulent and is based on false documents. I want to know, how can we file a complaint for the false documents? Let's hit this one. Come on, guys, let's do this. And we need to understand, here's just another quick little video from Catherine Austin Fitts, and she points out we really don't have an economic problem, we have a political problem. We need to take this to heart.
We're in a situation where we've been operating for 500 years in a financial model. I call it the central banking warfare model. And so imagine if an entire global society it helps to stay in a state of amusement.
Sorry, I don't know what
but he's
happened.
doing one dance. It's not so easy for one person to change. And so we're in a situation where real change is something not in any one of our control. And so I think to participate in a process of change where, it's kind of an out of control swarming situation, it helps to stay in a state of amusement, because you need to, this is going to be a chaotic process to get from here to there. One of the things that most helps me stay in a state of amusement was in the 90s, I spent a lot of time trying to understand the economy in the United States. And what I discovered was, in fact, if you look at the total wealth that we have in this economy right now, to me it's less than 1% of what's possible. Because so much of how we've engineered the federal finances shrinks the pie. It centralizes control, but it shrinks the pie. When you have an entire society running around pretending in an official story that's not true, and engineering and rigging all sorts of things and behaving as a criminal enterprise. Criminal enterprise does not optimize total wealth in an economy. So, if we're managing the country like it's a scene from Animal House, we're not going to end up happy and wealthy. Anyway, so I did a series of simulations. I had a private investment bank in Washington, and we built a database operation where we could look at the U.S. economy by place and re-engineer optimizations by saying, okay, let's just pretend for a second, we're going to take the federal budget and we're going to change it so that we can make the pie as big as possible. What I discovered is, and this is before I knew about all the technology that's hidden and been suppressed, but what we discovered was if you just re-optimize the economy to make wealth as much as possible, there's plenty of money for everybody. We have absolutely no economic problem on planet Earth. We have a political problem. Now, it's a political problem that's way outside of my control or your control or any one of our control. But there's no reason other than stinking behavior to cause us to be wanting for anything. We live on a beautiful planet. We have a wealth of resources. We have a wealth of technology and intelligence. And so, it was at that moment, I'll never forget sitting on the trading floor at Hamilton Securities and realizing the wealth that was possible. And I started to laugh. It was like a giggle that's never left me. And so I look around and what I see is, I had a pastor in Washington who used to say, God does not bless a mess. Well, that's our problem. We have a mess, but it's a political mess. It's not an economic mess. And it always leads me back to the same question, which is, who's really running things and why are they behaving this way? I don't know the answer to that question. I've spent my whole life trying to figure it out, but ultimately one day I just decided, that I had to approach this in a state of amusement because, in fact, our circumstance was, it was tragic, but it was a comedy. Because it doesn't have to be like this at all. I'm an amused optimist. The other thing is I understand the power of coming clean. If you sit back and you study the economy globally, what you see, our planetary economy is like Disney World. There's this beautiful world upstairs of Minnie and Mickey and all sorts of stuff are going on, good and bad. And then you have a world underneath the ground that's engineering this world, So we have an overt world and we have a covert world. And if you integrate all of it, you study and you look at the economics, what it says is planet Earth is being harvested. The entire global economy, down to your household and my household, or, our local economy or our national economy, is being harvested. And what I know is that the way we're being harvested, think of it, I call it the tapeworm economy. It's like a body that has a parasite. And what we need to stop doing is feeding the parasite. That's why I call it coming clean. Because what I know is if enough of us are willing to withdraw and say, something, I refuse to be harvested anymore, the tapeworm, will die. So I look at this sometimes spiritually, which say, and I say, we all have to decide: are we going to play along with what has become, an intense, an increasingly perverted, very unhealthy system, or are we going to come clean? And what I know is from looking at the money and the economics, if enough of us come clean, we can have a system on this planet where we can all be very wealthy.
Fascinating. Fascinating. I hope you're fascinated like I am. We are being harvested. We now are aware of it, that we're hosts for this parasite. And I'm really hoping that we can actually move towards how to stop being harvested. That's why I've invited Phil to join us today. Hey, Philip, this is CJ. You're on the air. Thanks for joining us.
I'm very happy to be with you.
Oh, we're just really looking forward to the kinds of information you're going to bring to us today. I've been talking about, and I got the links that you sent. Obviously, go local, but then other reinventing the currency and looking at other ways that we could structure our environment that would really benefit the people.
Yeah.
Just
You know,
go ahead.
just in looking at my involvement in these things in the most general terms, I have come to understand that the money that we use is absolutely central to both the problems that we're currently experiencing and to the potential solutions for them. And my concern these days is that people who are in a position where they're supposed to be making decisions that help us to take better control of our economic future aren't really making the decisions that are going to do that. They seem to be stuck in a mindset of victimization rather than a mindset of looking for real solutions. And what we've got here in Go Local and in Sonoma County, you know, we're right at the cutting edge of the localization movement. And it seems to me, not to sound conceited about it, but I think what we have is a whole recipe or a panoply of solutions that will radiate out and, you know, ripple out and address all of the problems that we're currently facing, including things like environmental devastation and the tendency to, you know, mass-scale violence like wars and terrorism and so forth. All of this will be significantly impacted by making intelligent, democratic, sustainable decisions about our money.
I think I agree with you very much, Phil. I mean, you know, I agree with that. And I just showed on the show, you may not have been able to see it, Catherine Austin Fitz, about five and
I did see some of her talk. Yes, I know her, and I've appeared on a panel with her a couple of years ago at the Harmony Fair. And she has a marvelously nuanced and detailed understanding of the problems that face us, and has a lot of good ideas about solutions. But the one idea that I don't think that she has gotten involved in yet is the idea of democratic, locally controlled, sustainable, self-generated credit, which is a different name for a community currency. And Phil, anyway, that's where I think Go Local and our current efforts are unique.
Now, Phil, one of the things she just said, we just saw her say this, that we're the host. You know, all the people on the planet are being harvested. She likened it to, a being having a tapeworm, and they're eating up, you know, the private bankers. I think you and I would probably go to that level, saying that they are sucking up all of the wealth for themselves rather than letting it be shared democratically amongst everybody. And she talked about withdrawing from the system in such a manner that the tapeworm would die. And so I'm thinking, just taking what she just said, and then I've got Go Local now up on the screen, and you've commented on this as a democratically controlled credit system, right?
Right.
Isn't that what you just said? So explain is this like a type of bartering?
You can see it that way. You could think of it as a barter pool. It is an alliance of businesses that have decided to issue their own credit to each other rather than having to go to banks and begging for them to give them loans and then having to pay through the nose in interest when those loans have to be repaid. The idea of credit clearing has an illustrious history, and the most successful example of it currently in the world is in Switzerland, the VIR, W-I-R system that was founded in 1934 by 17 businessmen in Zurich who couldn't get loans from the banks that they needed in order to pay each other for the things that they bought from and sold to each other. And since the world was in the depths of the recession at that point, or the depression, and they couldn't get the money from the banks because they weren't lending. Now, does this sound familiar?
Oh my goodness!
What's going on right now when most of our economic woes stem from the fact that there isn't enough money available for us to meet our needs. Okay, well, anyway, what do 17 businessmen in Zurich do? They said, okay, since we can't get the money that we need from the banks, why don't we just issue it to each other? It's just credit. And we can issue our own private credit amongst ourselves and circulate that credit and use it to facilitate the purchases that we need to make. So that's the basic idea. They have been doing that ever since 1934, and now the Via Bank, they've become a regular bank as well as doing their own private currency trades with each other. They currently do upwards of $2 billion worth annually of business using the Via franc as opposed to the Swiss franc. And, this is, I think, the most eloquent testimony that one can find for the power and the potential of such a system. We all know how successful the Swiss economy has been and how relatively immune to the ebbs and flows of the market Switzerland has been. Well, there have been studies done that demonstrate that a big reason for that is the counter-cyclical nature of the Via franc. When businesses can't get the money from the banks that they need in order to buy the things that they need to buy, they have access now to this parallel currency called the Via franc, which allows them to ride out the troughs in the economic system. So it's a proven concept, and it's really amazing that not more people are aware of it and aware of its potential, and that we haven't employed that in targeted ways in our economy. And I'm thinking first and foremost actually of public budgets, which I characterize as an endangered species, because we just see our public agencies saying, well, we're going to have to cut back this service and we're going to have to cut back that service because the revenue just isn't there to support them. And the only financially responsible thing to do is to cut outlays when you don't have the revenue. Well, that's not responsible. What we're doing is losing all kinds of things that we are responsible to maintain if we take ourselves seriously as a civilized society. What we need to do is to come up with other resources. Why not use the kind of resources that the 17 business people in Zurich in 1934 recognized as a good possibility and just say, we can issue our own credit. We don't have to rely on the banks to do that for us.
Now, Philip, so 17 companies back in 1934 in Germany, right? Europe, someplace. Switzerland, right. They decided that they were going to just, if you will, have a system of trading their services to each other, and they called it credit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's like a barter system. The idea, let's see, how to put this best, most easily understandable. If you want to buy something from somebody, but you don't have the money in your pocket to pay for it,
right,
you can buy it on credit. Everybody understands that. And that just
right,
means that the person is willing to believe that the note that you give him
right,
will allow him to regain the same value that he's given to you in this initial transaction at some future date. Well, that's the basic function of money to begin with. But why? But we seem to have the notion nowadays here and throughout the global economy that you have to have the money first in your bank account before you can spend it. And it has to be put in your bank account by taking out a loan from the bank. So the bank issues the credit, puts it in your account,
exactly,
and you can use it.
Exactly. And that's because we have been manipulated and taught this by the banks.
That's right.
And that is the, quote, only way that they can maintain control. So as we unteach ourselves that we don't need the bank for a loan, in other words, you're basically saying these corporations, these companies in these areas are giving each other loans.
That's right. That's exactly what they're doing.
Okay, so tell me, how did you get this started? And okay, everyone that's viewing, they're catching along with me, and we want to hear now. How did you get where you're at? If Sonoma County's on the bleeding edge of this, how have you talked? Which companies, and how did you proceed, and where are we right now? And I'm going to put the Go Local website up again.
Mm-hmm. Okay, where we're at right now with what we call our Go Local Buck credit rebate program is that we decided to address this question of generating our own credit, not from the point of view first of businesses loans to each other, which is what they did in Switzerland.
Okay.
Rather starting with the consumers, because we want the thing to get grounded in a broad-based way. So the initial step was to invite businesses to offer to their customers rebates of from anywhere from 1 to 10% on the purchase price of things that they had just bought. And that rebate then would be stored in an account, in a customer's account, as a credit, accessible via the Go Local Rewards card, this magnetic stripe card. And the next time the customer goes either back to that same business that issued the credit or to another participating business in the program, that credit is immediately applied to the purchase price of whatever the customer is buying at that second step. Then the customer pays that reduced price. The reduced price is recorded by our software, and on the basis of that reduced price, a new rebate is issued that shows up again as a credit in the customer's account. That whatever the percentage is of the purchase price that the merchant has decided they will offer is applied to the net of what they have paid after the application to the price of the credit that they already had in their account. I hope this isn't going too fast, and I'm making sense.
I think it's making some sense, and I'm showing on the screen right now what Oliver's Market, that's just a local grocery store, has to say about the effectiveness of Go Local membership. And they're saying that sales of local products, that must mean their sales, have grown about 35% in the past 2 years, about twice as fast as non-local products.
Right. Well, this is true, and Oliver's is a wonderful Go Local member. They are not yet using the credit rebate program for internal reasons having to do with questions about cash flow and where money is likely to pool and stuff like that. They haven't gotten aboard the Go Local credit rebate program per se. There are about currently between 35 and 40 businesses that are using that program, and one of them is another grocery store, namely Community Market in Santa Rosa. They have achieved wonderful results via the use of the Go Local buck. An example is that in the past month, that's the month of March, they recorded total sales of $65,000 that were facilitated via the rewards card. Now that doesn't mean that 65,000 Go Local bucks were involved in the transactions, because we're not quite that far along on our development yet.
Okay.
But it does mean that the people who were using Go Local bucks came to Community Market and had their card swiped, had their credit amount applied to the price of the groceries that they were buying.
Right.
The overall total of those transactions was $65,000 plus. That is 20% greater than in the preceding month, and it is 100% greater, or more than 100% greater than it was just a year ago. So that's an indication of the growing attractiveness of this Go Local Buck program. And what they have understood recently, because we came up with a new analytical tool that demonstrates this, is that a significant portion of those Go Local bucks that were spent in their store were not issued by them, but were issued by other merchants in the system. Well, of course, that's the whole idea, but it's nice to be able to show them what percentage of the sales that were rewards card facilitated actually involved Go Local bucks that had been issued somewhere else. And I don't remember the exact percentage, but it's somewhere around 15 to 20%, I think. So they got a lot of business coming from other businesses on the strength of the Go Local Buck program.
Oh, that is so really what if I was to sort of summarize this, it sounds to me as if you have taken, if you will, a barter system into the public arena where people can barter with local merchants and yet use that barter credit, if you will, for some other purchase, and that benefits everybody.
That's right. I have to put one caveat on that. It's not. Okay. We haven't developed the system yet to the point where a customer can actually issue his or her own Go Local bucks.
No, I mean they just use the reward card.
To state, yeah. But using the rewards card,
right?
The merchants are the ones that issue the Go Local bucks.
Right.
Customer then, having earned those Go Local bucks by virtue of shopping at that respective business, now has the Go Local bucks and can spend them. So it's kind of like a debit card. You know, you have to
Yes.
have money in your debit card account before you can spend it. And so the way that you get your Go Local bucks is you go to a business and you pay the regular price, and then you get a rebate. And there are your Go Local bucks, which are now available to be spent the next time you visit that or another business in the system.
Or another business, right? So you must have some kind of a fairly active campaign to get businesses involved in this.
You bet.
Okay, so what actually are you doing, and how many people are out trying to sell this? And tell us a little bit about the boots on the ground effort, because that's where the rest of us are at.
Right. Well, Go Local is a small organization. We've got a team of 4 active members now, and 2 of those members, Janine Murray and Terry Garrett, are out beating the pavement regularly, recruiting new businesses into this Go Local Buck plan. But we're not growing as quickly as we would have hoped, because it's a tough concept for merchants in particular to initially get their heads around. The idea of accepting something different in payment for their goods and services than the U.S. dollar exclusively. You know, the Go Local bucks are worth the same as a U.S. dollar
Right.
in terms of their effect on the price that you pay. But they aren't U.S. dollars, and they aren't redeemable in U.S. dollars. And that, by the way, sets the Go Local buck credit rebate system apart from other similar local currencies around the country and around the world. You don't have to have dollars to buy your Go Local bucks in the first place, and you can't redeem your Go Local bucks for dollars either. You have to redeem them in the goods and services of the member businesses that are participating in the plan.
I would think, as I hear you talking about this, and imagine a company, being approached by you or one of the folks involved, and this is going to happen around the country as people get a grip on the potential of this. That very fact that the redeeming of these rebates, Go Local bucks, has to be in goods and services should be a big selling point, I would think. As the companies
Here's what
grasp
makes it
it.
attractive from the business's point of view. If you compare it to their getting credit from a bank in the form of
Right.
a bank loan, that
Right.
bank loan has to be paid back in dollars at some future point, and they have to come up with whatever the interest is on that loan.
Right.
No business nowadays can say for sure whether they're going to have that amount of cash to pay the loan back when it comes due, let alone the interest on it. You can't be sure of that. So there's this uncertainty that is always there in the normal way of doing business, and that uncertainty expresses itself in a number of negative ways as well.
Yes.
People not paying their bills on time and so forth, and various manipulative practices. But with the Go Local buck concept, the business is essentially, with its issuance of these Go Local buck credits, they're saying, we know that we're going to have to redeem those credits at some point in the future, because they show up as a debit on our account once we have issued them as a credit on the customer's account.
Right.
Every credit is matched by a debit.
Right.
That means that the business then that issued the credits is responsible in the future to redeem those credits when they come back to that store in the goods and services that are the stock and trade of that store.
Right.
They always have that. That's what they're in business to provide, is those goods and services, and that's what they have to pay to redeem the credits that they've issued. They don't have to pay dollars to do it. So that's what's attractive to the businesses about it, is they're getting marketing. What they're buying by participating in this program is effective marketing, getting more customers to come through their doors and buy their products.
And as there's more companies involved, it's a stronger and stronger solution. Like you were talking about in Switzerland, they started with 17 companies, and now they have their own bank.
Oh, they have, I don't know how many thousands. I think there's
Exactly.
60 or 70,000 businesses around Switzerland that
Right.
issue
Participate.
and accept Swiss, the Via franc rather than the Swiss franc.
Interesting. And so this is, if you will, in my summation, one thing that people everywhere in the country, actually the world, but we're focused here right now in the U.S. and all the various communities and states, that local people could go to your website or the Go Local website and if you will, copy that. I noticed you've got some videos. I haven't even had a chance to listen to them, but they could actually take this concept and start to work in their local communities with this. Like go to a chamber of commerce or a meeting of the businesses and offer this as a way to strengthen the economic stability in that local area with local businesses.
You got it. That's the idea. And yes, they could learn a lot from our website, from the videos that Terry Garrett has created that describe the Go Local Buck program. And if they want to get a bigger, more a stronger general grasp of the whole concept, there are these links that I have provided you to the books, many of which were written by people, well, all of which were written by people who have been instrumental in informing my own understanding of these relationships and processes.
Yes. In fact, I've just clicked over to Web of Debt because it is so critical that people understand currency. Now, most of our current viewers, do grasp that every dollar that's created by the Federal Reserve is actually a loan that the people have to pay back with interest. And that is the Web of Debt. I mean, Ellen Brown makes such a good case and explanation. It's really easy to comprehend. And once you comprehend that, then I truly believe that the people will be as upset as I have been about it. It is truly outrageous that this is what they've been doing. They've been harvesting us by forcing the planet to use their money and pay them interest on the use of that medium of exchange.
I've been collaborating with complementary economists in Europe, specifically in Germany, on these issues because I used to teach German at Sonoma State. So I've done some translating about these issues. And I like the thing that a recent correspondent, whose name is Thomas Meyer, who was going to be going, I guess it was in March, he went to a conference in Paris where he was delivering his ideas and their ideas for a way out of the euro disaster that's going on.
Yes.
And one of the formulations that he came up with was, how can we have been so foolish as to entrust banks with the creation of our money?
It boggles the mind. And as you look back at history, however, and I've read some history, I know we've talked about this, and it's talked about, I believe, in the Web of Debt too. The fact is the banks have worked very, very, very hard, including killing people that oppose them, to make sure that their currency is accepted and used. And others claim, and I don't have any second opinions, but they claim, and when you start looking at the harvesting effect of power and control that this has given these very few people, when they force the planet to use the currencies that they generate, I don't doubt that they will start wars over it. If any country steps up to say, we're going to just dump this Federal Reserve note, let's just do a true, honest U.S. dollar. My understanding is that both Abraham Lincoln and Kennedy had made proposals and were moving forward into honest currency. The implication, of course, is that is why they were killed. I don't know.
And I don't know whether that's true or not.
I don't either.
I think there's some chance that there was some sort of conspiracy that the bankers were behind, but I don't go there because you can't prove it, and I don't think there's anything to be gained by that. But what is there something to be gained by? It's just by looking at the facts.
Absolutely.
You look at the fact that Lincoln knew that he was going to need money to finance this war that was about to happen with the Confederate States. First, he went to the banks, and they suggested that they would give him the loans that he needed for 34% annual interest. And he said, excuse me, but we have the money to pay that interest,
exactly.
And so we're not going to do it. I will issue my own government, or not I, but we, the government of the United States, will issue our own money separate from any involvement of the private banks. And that money was then issued, and it was called greenbacks.
Right.
And I forget how many hundreds of thousands or maybe hundreds of millions of dollars, I forget what the amount was of greenbacks that were actually printed, literally printed, because it was paper money back then. to finance the Civil War. But after Lincoln's assassination, President Johnson rescinded that Greenback Act, or the money creation that had stemmed from it, and they stopped doing it that way. And they went back to private bank financing of all issuance of money, and they had all kinds of market crashes and bank failures and so on, leading to the adoption of the Federal Reserve System in 1913. But the Federal Reserve Act was written by bankers,
Yes.
was promoted and passed by bankers in the Senate.
Yes.
Guess whose interests it was designed to serve? Their own interests, first and foremost.
Absolutely.
And a system under which we have continued to operate ever since, in the mistaken belief on the part of most citizens that this is the only or the most responsible way to do money. It's not. It's unsustainable, and it results in the siphoning of wealth away from the people and towards the few people, and it's an ever smaller group of extremely rich individuals that control the money issuance by the banks. The
Exactly.
Federal Reserve is totally in their hands.
Exactly. That and I believe, we're at the natural and logical conclusion of the Federal Reserve Act and putting that control of credit creation in the hands of private interests. And as we've seen, they just completely run amok.
Yeah.
It's never good enough. Yeah, the question comes up, well, how much money do you need? It's not about the money anymore. It's about the power. It's about the land. It's about harvesting the resources. It's about control. It's psychopathic, in my opinion. I've got up here.
Absolutely right. It is psychopathic.
Yeah.
And the one thing that we haven't talked about yet specifically that drives this all is the feature called compound interest, which
Yes.
is an exponential function. And this, if I can put in a plug for one very affordable little book on my list of resources, it's Occupy Money, a book that I translated just a few months ago out of the German, and it's available now. You can get it via Copperfields. It costs about $12 or $13, something like that. It's a short introductory book, but the most important contribution that it makes to this discussion is a clear description of how compound interest as an exponential function actually works, and the fact that the way it works is so hard for us to grasp because it's not part of our daily lives. There's only one living mechanism that uses an exponential function as the basis for its growth, and that is the cancer cell. And yet, that function, that exponential function, is precisely what we use in order to drive the interest mechanism that we apply to the money that the banks issue. Now, if that sounds sustainable to you, we live on different planets.
Right.
Sustainable.
Right. And it looks sustainable in the early stages. It's like a body will not necessarily even know it's got a cancer problem or a tapeworm until it gets to the later stages. And I believe we're like in one of the latest stages. Now we can recognize this cancer that is just consuming everything because, like you said, it's exponential. So it's not just simple interest, but it compounds. And the thing that strikes me is on good faith estimates on loans. I mean, I've seen this for years on they call it a GFE. It's a statement that the borrower, the homeowner, the person buying the property and using a loan to get it, it says right at the upper left-hand corner how many times the amount they're going to end up paying. So, for example, it's typically like 4.3%. 4.3 times. So if you borrowed $100,000, you would end up paying back $430,000. Right. Well, that's not sustainable over a long period of time for millions and millions of people. And that's the point where the system is breaking down, and the people, of course, are getting ruined.
Absolutely, not only the people but the environment as well.
Yes.
Because look, if you look at the long-term effects of a system that demands that you pay back so much more than what you initially, the amount that you initially borrowed, what that means is that you have to get that money from somewhere. Well, if all of the money that is circulating is money that the banks have lent into existence, and if you're going to get out of that money, that loan principal that is our sole source of money, or practically our sole source of
That's
In order for that, and when that happens, then that other person is going to default on their loan. Well, nobody wants to do that because then you lose your collateral. So what do people do? In order not to default on their loan, they're forced, literally forced by the system, to take advantage to the greatest extent possible of the resources at their disposal. Those may be natural resources. We rape the planet. We cook our atmosphere.
Yep.
Or they may be human resources. We take advantage of each other. And
Right.
that is the unsustainable behavior that this system of creation of money leads us or forces us into.
That was one of the things that really struck me in reading The Web of Debt, and that is, if the only money that we can use comes with interest, then there's never enough money to pay it all back. Because every time they issue more money, if you will, or credit to make a payment, there's more interest that's demanded.
There's never enough money circulating
Right.
to all of the obligations that we've got on the books.
Right. And this is what Catherine Austin Fist is talking about. They're harvesting all of our work and effort and resources as people and as the planet simply for their benefit, when actually if we got rid of this parasitic type currency and had what others have called honest currency, I would say Go Local is an honest currency, because that is a method of fair exchange. They can't securitize it. They can't fractionalize it. They say, okay, this is $10. Here it is, $10. And so then you can go take those 10 Go Local bucks and go buy $10 worth of some other goods and services.
That's right. I mean, the beauty of it is that it is fully transparent, that it's spent into existence rather than being lent into existence, so it doesn't bear interest.
That's right.
I say that, it's important to understand what I mean. The businesses that the businesses that issue the Go Local bucks are not issuing a loan per se. What they're doing is spending money. They're creating the money at the same time as they're spending it in order to buy something. They're buying marketing power. Those Go Local bucks that they have issued in the process of buying the marketing that they want shows up then as a credit in the customer's account and a debit in their account. So it's a customer and merchant scratching each other's back kind of situation. The money that has been generated has been spent into existence, not lent into existence.
That
Spent
is
into existence. They have an obligation to accept it back when it comes back to them, and then it is retired. So you create the money in order to meet your needs, in order to do what has to be done, and then when the money comes back to you, you give back in goods and services the appropriate amount. And everybody's got those goods and services to give back at that point because that's what they do.
It's a fair
Stock and
exchange.
trade.
It's a fair exchange.
That's right.
Yes, and I love the concept. I'm so glad you said that it is being spent. This is something that is based on the economic activity, not the creation of fiat credit. I think most of our viewers comprehend, but it's worth repeating that the way in the fractional reserve system, the way the Federal Reserve creates money is they just make it up. It's just a computer click, or it's just a data entry.
And the essence of that loan is they assume that there is going to be some value created at some future point on the basis of that lent money that they have just created, poof, out of thin air. So it's an assumption about a future value. You could call that a speculation. In other words, our current money, the dollar and every other bank-issued currency, is a speculative currency. Whereas what we're talking about, the Go Local buck, is not issued on the assumption that some value is going to be created in the future. It's issued on the strength of the transaction that is facilitated by that issuance.
Right.
That transaction is real. It is concrete. It is a good or service being either created or transacted, changing hands.
And it's definitely for the benefit of the people and the local businesses.
Exactly.
So this definitely benefits us rather than being sucked out of our economy to the pocket of some central banker somewhere.
That's right.
Now, can you spend just a little bit of time, Philip? Thanks for taking so much time with us today on the reinventing money. You sent me a couple of links and some currency solutions for a wiser world. Can we talk about those?
These are just the books that have been published recently by my main sources of information and instruction on all of these matters. Tom Greco with his The End of Money and the Future of Civilization. That's probably my favorite lengthy book on the topic. Bernard Lietaud, a Belgian economist who has been one of my main gurus on all of this, recently came out with a new book called Rethinking Money, together with the Irish author Jackie Dunn. I just recently heard them speak down in Novato about their conclusions and the solutions that they propose for the various dilemmas that we're in internationally about money.
And what are they basically saying? Can you just sort of summarize it?
It really comes down to what I've already talked about, namely the ability of people and groups to issue their own credit. This is
Right.
self-generated credit that they're talking about. And there are various ways that it can be done, and there's all kinds of variations on the local currency or credit clearing or complementary currency theme. And so in these books, they give lots of different examples of where it has been done for specific purposes, how it can be done for purposes that haven't been addressed yet, and I would say first and foremost to save public budgets, this endangered species, that are going away because we can't get the tax revenues that we need. Because the money isn't there, to pay the taxes with, and because it's being sucked off by the big banks and their stockholders. So these are good general resources, to increase people's background knowledge of how the whole thing currently works and various healthy ways that we could fix it, change it so that we're not anymore being held hostage by this system that demands of us more than we can possibly give.
Exactly. This is really good feedback and information. And as usual, I'm looking for baby steps, because baby steps, inch by inch, life's a cinch, as they said. And people, if they're going to, we're changing a paradigm. And that is going to be little blades of grass growing here and there. It's going to be gradual, and there's so much blindness already on behalf of pretty much the planet, that what is the root cause of all of this fraud and all of these things that are going on that are, the collusion and conspiracy between the governments and the banks. Well, they've bought them off. It's a revolving door, and it all, if you go right down to the very root of it, is the fact that the creation of credit is for private profit, not public benefit. That's
Right.
my firm belief.
Yeah.
And so to shift from that, I know that you were on the show a couple of months ago. We talked about weaning ourselves off of, using just the dollar. But this is a way to create other credit, like the public banking credit, and now we're talking about business transaction credit. Marketing credit, almost, if you will, where local businesses can benefit amongst themselves via their transactions. And you're absolutely right. Nobody can get a loan from the bank anymore. I had somebody say, if you want they were trying to get some kind of a commercial loan, and the bank told them to go use their credit card. It's truly outrageous. And this is why we have cycles, because it takes some credit to be able to, like you talked about, level out the ups and downs of a business cycle. And if you don't have access to that credit, if you go down, you can fail.
Yeah. Now, I think it's important to emphasize that we're not talking about anything revolutionary here. We're not talking about doing away with the dollar or doing away with loans that are issued by private banks. There will probably be some role to be played forever, by those institutions. But what we are talking about is creating a new institution or a new network of communities that are able to address the problems that come from the business cycle such that when the dollars are simply not available for whatever reason, when the dollars aren't available for us to meet our needs, we have available to us a different resource.
Something else, or several something else's.
Yeah, and it's a parallel resource. It doesn't conflict with the use of the dollar. It just fills in the gaps that the unavailable dollar leaves empty.
I really like that. I so appreciate you taking the time to come with us and to actually be a founder of this kind of a co-op. And so and of course, I'm going to encourage everybody that's viewing to pass this out to everybody you know, and look at these websites. Look at Sonoma County Go Local. Emulate these in your community. Be a co-founder. This is the time of activism, and this is a time when people who never expected they would ever be an activist, like myself, actually get off their chairs and say, you know something, this is worth fighting for. This is not only worth fighting for us, ourselves and our own needs, but for my children, for the community, for the local businesses, and for survival. Because, I don't know about you, but I am sick to death of these bank cycles. I want to get out of them too.
Right. No, we've got to solve this problem.
Exactly.
For your viewers and listeners who are in Sonoma County, the first easy and fun baby steps that they can take is to get themselves a rewards card and start using it.
Oh, that's a great idea. All right, guys, if you're in Sonoma County, get a rewards
by
card.
going to the website,
That's right.
golocal.coop.
Yep, I've got it up on the screen right now. Excellent. And then once you get a rewards card, then go to your favorite merchants and ask them to join.
Right, if they haven't already.
Yeah, see, as the people, it's always about the boots on the ground, isn't it, Phil? It's about the people taking charge and saying, this is a good thing. Let's go out and let's start sharing it with other people, and let's ask them. And that merchant may say, oh, what is that? And of course, then they can the person may not even be able to answer. I'm not sure even I would be able to answer that, but I would certainly know who to have call them to explain it. And so, you can give a connection to the Go Local board and the people that are dealing with the businesses so that they have a lead. They can go in and start talking to these local businesses, and you can start building this. I don't care if you're in North Carolina or Florida or New York or California, Southern California, some other county. It's immaterial. Every place has local businesses that could use this and people that need this. And this is going to be a way that we can start helping protect ourselves from, bank cycles, which we're all suffering from right now.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Philip. I really appreciate it. Anything else that you want to leave with our viewers before we have to go?
Well, let me just say that, I came to this whole thing from a study of violence, study of the Holocaust in specific, and war and peace at Sonoma State University when I was teaching there. And I soon came to understand that the biggest single cause of large-scale violence, let alone smaller scale, is economic deprivation. And if we can get a handle on that, and we can, by virtue of this self-generated credit idea, then we are going to be addressing so many of our large-scale problems that make us all so sick at heart, like the bombing at the Boston Marathon and stuff like that. How are we going to get people to stop behaving so destructively? We have to make it possible for them to feel that they're not threatened by the rest of society, but are supported by it. In other words, we need to learn to take better care of each other than ever before. And I think that this self-generated credit idea is the most powerful single such idea that we have at our disposal.
I agree, Philip. Thank you so much for sharing. We really applaud your efforts, and we appreciate your foresight and your studies and understanding. And we look forward to actually making a change and a shift, helping bring about this new paradigm in our life and our economy.
Thanks so much, CJ, also for your role in spreading the word, because it's really important.
Well, we all have to do whatever we can do. I can at least talk about this stuff. Thank you so much, guys. And
you're welcome.
That's going to be it for now. As usual, we're going to join our singers as we bugger the bankers. And this is one way to bug them. Let's make sure we do that. Let's start weaning ourselves off of their credit. That really works for me. So thanks, guys, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Oh, and don't forget, tomorrow is Update Friday. So if you have an update, let me know. Bye now.
When I was a lass, I was proud of me class, like my father and mother before me. They taught me to fight for my civil rights, but it's always the same old story. The rich reign supreme while the poor can but dream, under Labour or Liberal or Tory. And I say, bugger the bankers and politicians, bugger the bureaucrats too, bugger the buggers who make up the rules, and if you're one of them, bugger you, and if you're one of them, bugger you.
The system is bent and the money's all spent.
We're badgered from every direction.
The workers get taxed while the wealthy relax.
With nary a moment's reflection. Where there's brass, there's muck, and they don't give an arse, 'cause they're programmed against insurrection. And I say, bugger the bankers and politicians, bugger the bureaucrats too, bugger the buggers who make up the rules, and if you're one of them, bugger you, and if you're one of them, bugger you. Now all you good people with passion to vent, don't give up the struggle for justice. But I've done my time on the protesters' line, and these days I show my dissent by loitering